this is Ben here with the PointByPatrol, and today I'm going to be installing a used PRL intercooler, and I'm going to be installing brand new PRL charge pipes. I'm going to kind of walk you through the process. The intercooler, there are PDF instructions available online, but I didn't really find any for the charge pipes, though it seems like a pretty straightforward setup. And I'm going to try to do this without having to lift the car up at all. And I've already kind of done my pre-work and looked in here and noticed a few things that are probably going to cause me a snag, but I at least wanted to demonstrate that this should be able to be done without having to lift the car up. So if you're, a driveway warrior, kind of like I am, I want you to know that this is something that you should be able to tackle without having to go to a professional shop or anything like that. And the reason that I'm installing all of this is because of my intake air temperatures, and the factory intercooler is just completely useless with the new engine and turbo setup. I was seeing intake air temperatures all the way up to 150 degrees. The car was not happy at all. It was pulling timing going down the straights at VIR all the way to nothing. It was running no timing whatsoever and just relying solely on boost. So ended up having to dial back the tune, drop the boost, and the car was actually faster as a result. But I can't have that anymore. We're not gonna put up with that any longer, and we're gonna go ahead and get started installing all of these parts here. And I'll show you guys roundabout how I do it. It is obviously from the underside of the car, but I think that I can get my mitts down in there and get that disconnected so that I can pull this hose off that goes to the turbo here. This one is very accessible and should be very easy to get to. It's just the other one that I worry about. And in addition to that, I'm gonna have to remove the intake. I'm gonna have to remove the battery. We're gonna have to remove this metal pipe here because the PRL unit comes with a new one. And you can't really see it because all of this is in the way, but it's the driver's side connection that goes to the intercooler. The PRL kit comes with a new one of those. So I'm gonna have to remove that. And what I'm thinking now, and these could be famous last words, we'll see, is that I should only really need to be able to disconnect this top hose clamp right here. And I should be able to pull the rest out through the front without having to worry about getting to the lower hose clamp on that same boost hose. And that's on the cold side. So first steps to take off the bumper. I'll demonstrate kind of how I do that. But for those of you who haven't done it before, you've got a clip here, this guy, as well as this guy and this guy, there, 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 here, there, and the other one that's kind of hidden under there. And what you're also going to need to do is remove that screw and that screw on both sides, just with a Phillips head screwdriver. And then there are a number of clips, and I'll try to show these as well. There are a number of clips under here that you're going to need to remove, such as this one, and those go all across the underside there, as you can see. So all of that's got to come out, and then you got to be really careful taking the front bumper off. What I'm going to do is lay a blanket down so that I don't scratch anything else up, because it can be rather abrupt, but there is a trick to it to kind of get it to come off easier than if you were to try to get a tool in here under the headlights and pry it out. You don't necessarily have to do that. We're going to continue here on top, and just so you guys know, this is all I've used so far. One Phillips head screwdriver and a small flathead screwdriver. All right, so that's all the bumper hardware out. The last is the clips that are underneath the headlights, kind of retaining the bumper in place, but all of this kind of works loose. On the corners here, you just kind of lift up and those come loose. So I'm gonna re-angle the camera here so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I missed 2 screws. They're up in the top corner here. I'll grab those now. These little guys right here. All right, so on the sides, you just kind of pull out lightly. What I'm going to do is put some tape up on the fender so I don't scratch any paint. This is the more abrupt part, and if I do it right, it works beautifully. You stick your hands in here, and you give it a sharp tug towards you, and that should help release all of the pop clips that are up here behind the headlight, because that's really about all that's holding it on. Two more clips, the ones I told you you didn't need, you certainly need. Okay, with the front bumper off, time to get the intake out of the way. For this, if you have a PRL intake like I do, you'll need a 4mm, that guy, coming over here, a 10mm, and a 7mm. Now with the intake out of the way, I am going to put this back in place, and I'm just going to put a little bit of tape over it just to make sure that nothing gets in there while I'm working around this area. All right, that's a good temporary solution for now. Next thing to tackle is getting the battery out. The battery is just a deep 10. All right, so then in order to get access to all of this, you need to remove this portion of the battery tray here with these 10mm bolts. And then we've got some clips and 10mm for this wiring harness that we'll probably want a little more wiggle room out of. So that's loose now and out of the way. You don't need to touch this one. Just need to get these 4 right here. Plug your map sensor, and we've got this hose, these 2 12s, and then these 10s holding to the throttle body. We've also got this 10mm right here, and as I said before, I'm going to try to snake this all the way down through without having to get to this the lower band clamp down there. Worst case scenario, I've got to get to it and, you know, my hand's kind of in a contortion, but really not a big deal. Gonna have to reserve this sensor for later. It gets reused, obviously, but this is now out of the way, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to put something in the throttle body. I'm gonna use tape, but something just to keep crap from getting in there while you're working in the area. I like to use bright tape just so that I don't forget it when it's time to put everything back together. Last thing you need is tape ending up in your intercooler piping. I think you'd probably have some boost issues if that happened. pretty major ones like no boost. Okay, so we've done everything so far that we really need to do up top on this side, but on the other side, on the hot side over here, you've got a band clamp down here, and then you've got one over here. As I had mentioned earlier in the video, this band clamp over here is upside down, which is going to be difficult to get to. I may be able to get into it from the side. I haven't really looked that way yet, but at the very least, since this one is accessible, I'm going to go ahead and try to get it. As you can see, I didn't take that all the way off. I slid it right back on just so that nothing can get in there while I'm working. I think at this point, it probably would make the most sense to move on to the intercooler. So that's what I'm gonna do now. The intercooler is fairly quick and painless. You've got 2 stay brackets at the top, 2 12s that hold it on either side. So all you need for this is a 10 and a 12. Then you're gonna need like a razor blade to cut this tab off right here. And you're gonna end up having to relocate this sensor per the instructions. Find that in a minute. There you have it, stock intercooler is out of the way. Okay, so the next thing that I'm gonna try to do here is to get this out with all the pipe still connected, all the rubber hose. It's just a 110mm bolt. There, as you can see there, that was no big deal at all, and I didn't even have to touch this lower hose here. So, also noticing oil inside of this piping, which means it is time to upgrade the factory PCV valve system. I think I probably have some radium catch cans in my future because this is not where I want oil. Okay, so I'd mentioned before that this lower band clamp here was facing down and that would be difficult to get to. And since it is, I'm gonna do the same thing here that I did on the other side and just put this pipe back. So, do my best to fish it out of there. There we have it. No need to remove that guy at all. Until now. There it is. All right guys, so a quick top tip on this hot side hose. I have pre-installed it, but without band clamps. I wanted to line it up with the turbo outlet all the way over to here. So I screwed it back in, reinstalled it, but then I got paint pen and I painted where the lowest band clamp needs to go. So I'm gonna pull this back out, tighten the lowest band clamp, put it back in, and install the top band clamp. And then I'll tighten that up. And to me, it just seems a little bit easier than trying to wiggle your hands down into this bottom band clamp location to get the thing tightened up after the fact. So you can see my white mark here, everything lines up. Comes with 2 different style band clamps. This is a 50x70. The 50x70 is intended for the hot side here only. And these are 7 millimeters instead of 10 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and zip this side down. Don't be afraid to go a little bit tight on these. Since this is silicone, you got to be a little bit more aggressive with it than with the factory rubber hosing. A lot of guys have installed this kit and wound up with boost leaks after the fact, which they then had to go perform a boost leak test and find the clamp that wasn't tightened enough. So one thing to look out for, obviously, when you're doing this is that could happen to you and it could also happen to me. But either way, I'm happy with that. We're going to go ahead and get back to installing here. And I'm also feeling around the flange here just to make sure that I have the silicone hose snugged up around all of it. I don't want it hanging off of any particular section. I want it snug. And I'm going to start this with a flathead because I'm having trouble kind of getting the tool down in there until this thing hugs up on it a little bit. And once it does, then I'll move back to the ratchet. Okay, before I do the cold side hose to the intercooler, I'm going to install this piece. It makes the most sense because I probably will have to locate the silicone hose the same way that I did on the hot side, just because it's easier to get to the lower band clamp with it being outside of the car. So with that in mind, since it is going to be connected hard here and here, seems like it just makes the most sense to me. So, as I mentioned before, these are the 60 by 80 clamps, and the 60 by 80 clamps are for the cold side. So, all right, so I've got my map sensor here. Pull this hose back off and install it real quick. There we go. Just a little twist so that you don't pinch your O-ring there. Otherwise, you'll probably throw some codes. Hadn't popped in all the way. We have it in all the way now. Awkward design that, because you've got your big engine room harness right here kind of fighting, and the last thing that you want to do is beat up this sensor. So I'm thinking, honestly, the best thing to do here so that doesn't take place is I'm going to pull these 12s here, possibly this 10. I'm going to start with these two to see if I can get some upward motion. It gives me a little more room. I'm still not really content with it, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull the 10 for the heater hoses so that they're not in the way. All right, that's a little bit more mobility there. And that certainly is getting where I want it to go easier. All right, so I've got that slid on. I'm gonna go ahead, hand thread these into place. All right, feel a lot better with those started. All right, so that's got it snugged up and in place. Our sensor's still in one piece. That's good news. And time to kind of position these clamps where they need to go. Remember that these have changed size from 10 millimeter to 7 millimeter. And to get that top guy, I'm gonna need an extension. All right, that guy's nice and tight. Now it's time for this one. Position it where I want. Get a little bit snug and just feel around, make sure that I'm happy with it. and I'm not 100% happy. So loosen it up a little bit. I want to make sure that it is on the inside of the bead roll so that we're getting a really good pinch. That feels better. All right. Washer was a little loose, so wanted to hit that again. I'm gonna plug in our map, check our clearance. We're good to go there. Put our hose clamp back on. Make sure it's tight, which it is, so that's good. We do have a little wiggle here, which is fine. And so now we're gonna get down underneath and we're going to work on the remaining portion. Okay, so I've transferred my grommet from the old hose here to the new pipe. See, it's same deal. You just transfer this over, you pull the cap out of the back, and then that allows the rubber to push past this opening. So I've already got this band clamp on, but it's not tight. I can still move it. It's a bit snug. I had to back this up just a little bit to even get it over this hump here. So I'm gonna try to go in this way, mark with the grease pencil, and pull it back out, snug this guy up, and then we'll snug the top side. I'm not gonna tighten this all the way until I get the top band clamp done, so we're gonna move up there now and get that band clamp settled. Once again, I'm feeling for my bead roll. Make sure I have my clamp in an ideal position. All right, happy with that there. No weird bends or movements. So I can get back down and finish tightening that 10. All good. So that's the intercooler piping installed. So I'm not gonna bore you with putting everything back together, but you'll need to reassemble your battery tray, reinstall your battery, and put your intake back in. I'll do that off camera, and then we'll move on to the intercooler. Okay, so I've got my used PRL intercooler. I'm gonna pull these out. I've got gaskets ready to go, so I'm gonna go ahead and place those where they belong. They've already been trimmed. Remember, this is a used intercooler, and the person that I bought this from has already trimmed the edges off of these gaskets. So these go into place here. And make sure they're gonna stay. And then you have, flip this, factory mounting brackets to reinstall, top and bottom. And then you have these caps here that go on the back side underneath that go into these little cups right there. So we're gonna try to get this all in there together in one piece. Oh, I almost forgot. Super important. We got this sensor here, and this guy's going to be in the way, so I need to remove this sensor out of the way here, and then I'm going to have to use a razor knife to cut this tab off. So I'll do that real fast. All right, so that's out of the way for now. And I'm already bleeding, so be careful when you're doing this so that you don't end up bleeding more. That's gone, that's out of the way. I'm gonna try this again. Looks like these tabs are gonna have to go on last, getting those out of the way. I'm gonna focus on these bottom guys here to make sure that they go into these cups. And in fact, I think I'm gonna install them into the cups first rather than on the intercooler, so. And I'm just double checking these gaskets to make sure they're still in place. They feel good. God, this thing's heavy. All right, so and that's not going to work. The gaskets have to be on the bottom of this to start. So luckily the bumper's strong enough to kind of hold this. Again, it's really freaking heavy. Lost the gasket on this side. Yeah, it'd be a lot easier if it didn't weigh 50 pounds. All right, that feels good. They're both in place. Put our bracket on both sides. I'm feeling my gaskets just one more time. I want to make sure they haven't rolled out. I'm glad I did, because this side had rolled out, so I'm pressing it back into place now. All right, I'm going to start the smallest bolt first, just to kind of hold everything in place for the gaskets. Or rather for the brackets. Trying to be careful here, but I might have to do the bag trick. So I'll show you the bag trick. When your bolt keeps falling out of your socket and you want it to stay, you get a little piece of plastic, you stick it in there, and then it stays. All right, so I got that side started. I'm gonna use the same bag trick for the other side. Okay, again, I didn't tighten those all the way because these aren't lining up as well as I'd like back here. It's gonna take some finagling to get it into place. So, and there. Double checking my gasket one more time on this side. Good. I'm starting these by hand because I do not want to strip the aluminum. Threads are really delicate. All right, got that side. I'm gonna come back and torque it after the fact, but now for the other side here. Camera overheated. I installed these bolts here. I haven't tightened anything down yet. It's 18 foot-pounds for all of them, the 10s and the 12s. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, and last but not least, you can't have this sensor dangling around. Also make sure that you don't forget to plug it back in, because if you do, your air conditioning won't work and you'll have the gift of taking your front bumper back off again, which is a complete pain. So my recommendation, leave it plugged in. 5/16 drill bit into the plastic here. See where it naturally wants to go, round about there. That's where you drill. There, it's mounted, and there you have it. That's the last of it. So if you bought one of these brand new, you're gonna have these rubber pieces that go on your front bumper. So you remove the air diverters on your front bumper and you install little rubber pieces. Since this one is used, I don't have those. I'm going to trim my factory air diverters so that they fit. I'm not going to show that because most of you guys are probably buying this new, plus it's going to take a bunch of guess and test, and I just don't want to hold you guys up any longer. So I appreciate you watching. We've installed the PRL intercooler, we've installed the PRL charge pipes, and that's it.